Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so if you saw my last video, you saw that the turbo spooled for the last time. Its whole life, all 15 seconds of it, it spooled really well, and then it decided to blow up. So I bought another one. Now the issue is, all of these exhaust housings are different sizes, so I'm not going to be able to use this 4-inch straight pipe here. But who wants it out the back? And you can make a hood stack. So I've acquired everything you need to hood stack your Cummins. Now, being an inline 6 Cummins, obviously this is going to be the easiest thing to hood stack. Most turbos sit all the way back there in the valley. It's going to be a lot more difficult to figure out what you need to do. But I figured with this, it's super easy to show you guys exactly what you're going to need to do. So for me, what I'm going to do is run it around. Make sure that I'm staying away from the firewall there. Make sure that I'm staying away from this wiring. It's all going to get heat wrapped, but I still want to make sure that I give myself some space so that things aren't rubbing, things aren't resting on your hot exhaust. Science experiment for today is complete. So I welded that flange onto the turbo. Steel does weld pretty nice to cast. Now the reason we had to do that was because I'm sick of waiting for flanges, and apparently 4 inches seems a lot closer to like 4 3/4. So that doesn't quite fit that flange, so we made our own. Now basically the plan here is to put that flange to that one. So we're going to build everything off this flange. It's going to come around and then back up right to here. And that should be that. We'll drill a hole in the hood and then we'll try out all our nice little tips. Now I made that sound 10 times easier than it actually is, because the problem is we are going to have a 180-degree bend and a 90-degree bend. Now I'm about to get real mathematical. So if you know how to make pie cuts, you can go ahead and skip over probably the next minute or whatever. But if you don't, this is how you find, the center of the pipe, how to make your angles and all that. So to make this U, we need 180 degrees of pipe. So if we were to use 6 pieces, right? You need 30 degrees, 30 degrees, 30 degrees. That's your 90-degree elbow. 30, 30, and 30. There's your other 90-degree elbow. Now with a 30-degree piece, let's say you cut it flat, 30 degrees, flat, 30 degrees. Now the issue is these pipes don't line up. When you cut it at 30 degrees, it becomes an oval. It becomes longer. So when you try and line it up, it doesn't line up at all. So to counteract that, what you do is you take this and you half the 30 degrees. So you put 15 degrees on each side. So this is actually the same angle, but it just looks a whole lot nicer. And then it also fits up to your next 15 and 15, 15 and 15. So with these 3 15-degree pieces, we have our 90-degree elbow. That puts us at 90 degrees. That's our first half. Now, the next thing you could do is you could do your 4 15s to make these 4 inside pieces. And then you do your flat and your 30 to finish off that elbow. Now the problem is the 15 doesn't fit up against the 30, so then you're screwed again. So what you do is you make another 15 and 15. So right now we're sitting at 150 degrees. So what do we need left to make 180? We need 30 more degrees. So then you make your flat and a 15, and then you take another one, flat and a 15. So that puts you, that makes your perfect U just like that. Now, our original plan was 6. It would have worked. It would have had, a little extra here and a little extra here because those 30s are larger. And the other thing is, the more pie cuts you have, the closer to a circle it's going to be. So when you add, you make 5 of those 15 and 15 degree ones, and then you make 1 and 2 of the 15 and a flat and a 15, you get your 15 degrees, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30, and your 15. And that adds up to 180 degrees, makes a nice U, and then you don't have to worry about any overlap. You have nice surfaces to weld to. All right, so all these pipes have a weld seam. So you have your first line. Now you need to find 180 degrees to that to make sure that your cuts are gonna be square and even, make sure all your angles line up. So what you're gonna do is find the circumference of your pipe. So this is a 4-inch pipe. The circumference is like 12.56. And then you're gonna divide it in half. And that half will get you 180 degrees to this other side where I drew the line here. So half of that is 6.28. You're gonna measure around your pipe. You know, you start, let's say at the 2-inch line, because this thing's obviously gonna mess up your measurement. So you start at the 2-inch line, you wrap your way around to find your 6.8. So 2 plus 6.28 is 8.28. And there's that 8.28. Put your line there, put a dot, measure in the middle, measure at the bottom, and then use a straight edge, draw your line down. So now that we have our mark here, and then that weld seam right here where that pipe comes together in manufacturing, you're gonna get your chop saw set up. So I have it set at 15 degrees. So all of my cuts are gonna be at 15 degrees. So then you line your mark up with this here. Boom. Make your cut at your 15 degrees. Let's say this was my 15 degrees. So there's our cut, boom, boom. Then you're gonna rotate it 180. Rotate it till your line meets up with this piece here again. You're gonna cut, and then what you'd have is a 15-degree angle going this way and a 15-degree angle going this way, making it a total of 30 degrees. Now, if you remember back to the beginning, where I talked about how you find, you know, the weld mark and then you make your mark on the 180, that makes it perfect so that when you line them up, to make sure that your angles are going the right way, you line up the line, you line up the line, line up the line, and then that makes sure that your angle is going the right way, because obviously if you line them up like this, you're gonna get wonky angles. Now we're ready to weld these pie cuts together so you guys can get a good view of what I'm talking about here. Now, if you do everything correctly, I just have it tacked here so that I can adjust as need be. You know, probably try and bend it so that I fill some of these gaps up. But there's our 180 degrees with our bung there. Right, so take 2, and that's about how it's going to sit. Obviously, it's all going to get fully welded and then heat wrapped, make it look pretty. But that's the first half and the majority done. Now we got that 180 in there, and I cheated, and I do have a 4-inch elbow for the up angle, and that's about what it's gonna look like when it's all finished up. Wrap it in some heat wrap. Still gotta figure out where to cut the hole in the hood, and that'll be that. All right, so here's where we're at. Got that U on there, got that elbow tacked on, got it all plumb, making sure that it's level. Coming straight out the hood. Now it's time to take it out, finish up all the welds, and then put it on for good. Woo! So I got that first bead, ran around the bottom, around that flange. Now, this is something that I like to call stitching. Basically, if you have like a large gap in the pipe, just do a whole bunch of tacks, and then that should give it more metal so that when you're welding, you're not burning through. When I weld exhaust, there's 2 things I like to make sure of. One, that I am patient, because if you just try and weld all this right now, all in one go, you're gonna burn through, the metal's gonna get too hot, you're not gonna get good beads, and you're just gonna burn through, ruin all the good work you did. And then number 2, is to make sure that your welder's set right. So what you're looking for is that it isn't a huge bubble. You don't want a whole bunch of weld. That means your wire speed is too high. But you also don't want it to where it's burning through. That means you're running it too hot. So this one, I was running at a good temperature, good wire speed, but this piece is much thicker than the rest of this exhaust. It's just thin exhaust. So I'm gonna have to turn down the welder and also the wire speed and get it set to where it welds nice on these other seams that are a bit thinner and not gonna be able to take as much heat as this flange. Got her all welded up, fit up, tightened down, made sure that this stack was level, and we're ready to start this thing up. The welds aren't perfect, but the only way to make it look real pretty is to TIG it. But with a MIG, it's about the best I could do. I'm no professional, but it'll hold, it's strong, it's not gonna leak at all. But yeah, let's get this thing started up. So we got it started. Sounds good, sounds nice. Definitely gonna be loud and obnoxious. But I took it back out because I'm gonna wrap it in some heat shield. Just make sure that nothing is getting too hot around it. There's no need to be making the whole engine bay all hot. And just like that, now you don't gotta worry about what your welds look like. And man, it almost looks like I know what I'm doing. Obviously, I'm not gonna actually use that plastic zip tie. That's just there for mock-up, but that's about how it's gonna look. It's time to cut the hood. Now this is a scary part. You don't wanna mess up. You don't wanna make big cuts and ruin your hood. So what I did was I closed the hood, made a mark, and now I'm gonna use a hole saw and see if we can't make that mark, see if it'll fit. After a little bit of trial and error, got that hole in the hood. And just like that, we now have a hood stack. Now, next video, I'm gonna have to make my own air intake because the one that I had no longer fits because the exhaust is in the way. And we'll be making some tips for it, trying out some random things. But yeah, that'll be it for this video. Thank you for watching and God bless.